Rightio, session 5! Stakeholder engagement. Why is it important that we engage with stakeholders? It's always a question. It's just going to start an argument, really, most of the time. But if we don't consult them, things will blow up in our face, especially at political level, I guess, if we think about it that way. So think about the policies and the way that policy change and inadequate policy gets banded around in the government sector. Even in the media. Sometimes the biggest involved in that poor policy, I guess, if we think about it, is the inadequacy of engagement, or at least the impression that the engagement was really poor. So it's really important that we consider realistically how we might want to engage with our stakeholders, or at least identifying the ways that, or the people that need to be engaged with, for number one. And then subsequently, what level of involvement do we really want to have? So obviously in this situation, when we're looking at developing this policy, the statutory right holders or the fishermen themselves are really, really, really important. We can't make a decision without them because it's directly impacting their bottom line, their financial bottom line. It's their living. If someone said to you, I'm going to take $500,000 off you, when you're only making $700,000, as a business, you'd be really peeved. So we really want to make sure that we can address their concerns, or at least give them the chance to have their voice heard, and then give them a rebuttal, rebuke what you're saying to them by giving them the facts. If we don't protect this fishery by this mechanism, we won't have a fishery to protect, and you won't have a job. Alright, so in this fishery, I've gone off once again to the AFMA website. You'll see in here that SBT turns up again as a stakeholder. Really important with them because we're managing this as a global fishery within a Commonwealth context. We've got this one here as the Southern Bluefin Tuna Management Advisory Committee, a bunch of scientists, economists, biologists, managers. Sometimes these NGOs even creep into those meetings. And non-government organisations, the likes of Greenpeace, Sea Shepherd, PETA, oh God knows. Any of those ones that raise an argument for apparent no reason, just to have their voice heard, almost. World Wildlife Foundation is probably one of the better ones in the history of things. They're really advocate for the sector of people that don't necessarily even engage in fishing or on a recreational or a commercial basis. They might even be vegetarians or vegans, and they just want to protect the animals, but they need to have their voice heard. You might consider them in your engagement so that they don't inflame an argument, and they may have some valuable input at some point, particularly in relation to environmental concerns as they might be raised. So really we want to be considering them. Obviously in this situation, the recreational voice needs to be consulted. In many situations, commercial fishing has in the past not consulted, and then it's blown up in their face. So these days, it has been really apparent that if we engage and consult with the recreational sector, we're more likely to get an outcome that is representative of the whole group of stakeholders. You know, commonly recreational guys look at the commercial guys and go, "Oh, you bastards." The commercial guys are going, "Oh, they're just whinging. We've got a livelihood out of it." We have to share it. It's a shared resource, so we need to be keeping the recreational groups involved in it. The likes of Verfish, Tarfish, Recfish West, Suntag over in Queensland. I don't know, probably New South Wales have one. I forget the name of them. So those advocacy groups are the voice for the recreational anglers, not necessarily the state-based departments, which is kind of where we get this next one from, state fisheries management bodies. Their jurisdiction only lies out to 3 nautical miles, but we do have things like joint management agreements that may enable AFMA to empower the state management systems to do the compliance and the management within their own state. Those offshore constitutional settlements, but generally low risk, low volume, low in value for the Commonwealth. So we need to be consulting with them because we might make a change. This policy might affect the way that they need to administer their licensing or whatever inside the state. In this situation, we're trying to talk about a biomass reduction in the biomass increase by reducing commercial volume, and it might even benefit the recreational sector. Other government sectors, so we might be talking about the Department of Water, the Department of Environment, Departments of Parks and Wildlife. Those people or those sectors need to be involved in the process, maybe on an ad hoc or an as required basis. They might even just be independent advisors saying, hey, this is what's happening in the environment, this is what's happening with the water, we're putting a marine park smack bang through that migration route, so on and so forth. They would realistically be involved in it as required. Then we could do something silly and consult the transport and logistics operators associated with the direct product contact. In this situation, the reason I put this one in here is because SBT requires by their code of conduct that people receiving the southern bluefin tuna have to be approved to do that. So that's why they've been put in there. Realistically, if I was catching any other fish and it was being transported through this guy from there to there, it's a professional arrangement or a professional contract that not necessarily governed by the government department, more so than the individuals fishing and receiving and transporting goods. But in this situation, the SBT mandates that the fisherers and the people transporting that goods inside the state or inside the country or internationally to Japan, they pretty much have to tag their fish with like a gill tag, pretty much to say this is where that fish was caught, how it was killed, how it was caught, how it's been processed, when it was caught. It helps us to maintain traceability, and sometimes that's where MSC comes in. Those sorts of tagging and recording technologies enable full traceability of that product, which helps to expand or increase the value of that fishery for the fishers to the market. Then you'll see in my example that I've just given an example of how these people will be engaged. Alright, and later when we talk about it, we come to the review and the reporting in the next section. I've pretty much just summarised that in a table so that we don't have to read all that stuff. A little action plan, so to speak. If this happens, this is who we're going to consult and this is how we're going to consult them. So what I want you to do for me, shoot across, do the same thing that we have for all the other sessions. Have a look at the stakeholders involved in the process of managing this fishery, and then don't copy what I've got in here again. Just try and put it in your own words as to how these guys will be engaged and what level of involvement are they required to have. It's really important that is in there for maintaining the transparency of this policy. Okay, so next session I will have a look at how we're going to review what's involved in the process of looking at the data within inside this fishery and how we would use it to improve the process of managing this fishery.